Good evening, everyone. I wanted to welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. My name is Jim Shead. I will be your instructor tonight. Tonight's webinar is about bird dogging versus wholesaling and how to protect yourself doing both. This webinar has taken place due to some activity recently of my own properties and some of the students we work with. So I was asked to share some of the information of what is the difference in bird dogging and wholesaling and how do you actually do both and things like that. So I'd like to do that tonight. But before we get started, we have many on the call tonight that are new to our webinar series. We do these almost every week. And by the way, they are recorded, so if you miss something during the presentation, we do record them and we can send you a link to the follow-up webinars. But real quickly, for those of you that may not know me, my name is Jim Shead. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I am the founder of American Freedom Properties here in Atlanta. That is my investment company. Also American Investor Association and Canadian Investor Association. I'm what I call myself a business entrepreneur. I left corporate America at the age of 35 to start my own business, and I've been a business owner ever since. Haven't looked back, and I enjoy the freedom of being an entrepreneur and work for myself. I am a full-time real estate investor, so I do practice what I preach, unlike some other gurus that I happen to know. I'm also a teacher, a mentor, and a fear fighter. I love teaching. I started teaching about 20 years ago and mentoring about 15 years ago, taking on several students at a time. I'm not one of those, again, TV gurus that takes on a lot of mentoring students, but I do mentor people. And also I'm a fear fighter. One of the things that I realized early on is that a lot of people, when they get started in real estate, one of the problems they had was fear, and they needed to overcome it. So in all my presentations that I do across the country and Canada, I love talking about fear, life coaching, things like that, which is a passion of mine. But tonight we're here to learn about bird dogging. And why is this webinar important to you? You know, one of the things that I have noticed over the last 20 years of doing webinars is that whatever the flavor of the day is what a lot of your new investors and what I call newbies tend to focus on. Now, what I mean by that, let me be real clear, is that when I got started in the 80s, you know, it was the savings and loan crisis. Then you got into HUD homes, and then it was REOs. In the 2000s, it was the fixer or the pre-foreclosures. Then it was foreclosures. Then it was new construction, condo conversions, and so on, all the way down to when the real estate bubble busted. It was buying real estate pools, buying notes. It was the bank-owned properties. Then when that dried up and no one was buying, it became wholesaling or bird dogging. And then when the TV shows came out, the Flip This House shows, everybody wanted to be a flipper or a rehabber. So, you know, and one of the main topics that is going around the education circuit, if you will, right now is wholesaling and bird dogging. And I talk to a lot of students and a lot of people that I invest with, and I think there's a big misconception on, first of all, what the two are and what your roles are. I think that, you know, a lot of people go to these seminars or they watch a webinar like mine or other things, and they hear the word wholesaling, you know, money down, and they make it sound really simple. And one of the reasons that they do that is that they want you to buy some book and tape or course or something that they're doing. Now, also real quick, a little housekeeping I meant to mention. For those of you that are on this call now, and if you're planning on only sticking around for the first part because you don't want to stick around for the sale, I do want to let everybody know there will be no selling on this webinar. Almost 100% of the webinars that I do are educational only. They're not designed to sell books and tapes and things like that. Actually, somebody asked me recently, what's my system that I sell? I said, I don't have books and tapes to sell you. So this is strictly information. Also, I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, this webinar is a interactive type of webinar where we allow people to ask questions and things like that, make comments. So if you notice on your webinar screen there, through webinars on there, you'll notice that you can submit questions. So throughout the webinar, if you have questions, please post them. I'll be able to see them. And at the very end, I promise to answer almost all of them that I can. I'll stay on as long as it needs to. And if it's a question that I feel needs to be answered at the time it was given, I'll answer it then. But I am one of the instructors that I do like interaction. Again, I do the business. And if it is a question that I happen not to know the answer of, I have a great team of people that I work with that I know that we can probably get you the answer and then follow up with you. But going back, why this webinar is important to you. You know, one of the things that I run into a lot in the industry is people that have a lack of knowledge. Now, it's not that they're stupid or ignorant or anything like that. It's just that they don't know what they don't know. And this webinar came about due to my friend Rob Provenzano actually doing a lot of marketing and things and talking about what, you know, bird dog versus wholesaling. And then lo and behold, about a week ago, I am searching some of the properties that I actually have. One of the things that I am diligent about is any properties that I own or I'm working on, I check once a week on the internet just to see what's being said about it. Now, one of the reasons that I do that is because I know that there are a lot of people out there committing fraud and they're scamming. Now, what do you mean by that? A lot of you may not know this, but Zillow, you can hijack other people's properties, and it happens all the time. There is some unscrupulous instructors out there teaching you how to create false ads and market other people's properties at a much lower price to get a buyer's database or a database of other investors. Now, this is something that I never preach, and I actually teach people about so you can avoid it. And that actually happened to me last week. I was sitting at my computer, and I'm going through my list of properties that I manage and own and work with other investors. And I come across one of my properties that I notice is for sale. And I go, wow, that's very interesting, because I own it and I know that I have not sold this property. And then I noticed that a property across the street, same thing, for sale. And so I looked on the Zillow ad, is where I found it, because one of the first things I always do, and I have taught this in other webinars, is that you just Google the address to see what comes up. You know, I love Google. Everybody uses it, so that's why I use it. So I just type in the address in Google and see what comes up. Now, normally the first ad that's going to come up is Zillow, of course, which I'm going to show you tonight. Well, I pulled up the Zillow ad and it said property for sale. Then I found a Postlets ad, and I found all types of marketing of a property that I own. And actually, I sold this property as a wholesaler to another investor this year. So technically, I really don't own it yet, but I am managing it for the investor. And this property was purchased over a year ago. So I'm wondering how it is. So first thing I normally do is I call Rob and I say, Rob, what are you doing? You know, a lot of you know that Rob Provenzano works with me, and he's mentoring with me right now and does a lot of property. So one of the things that I happened to notice that, I thought, well, first thing I thought about was maybe he or somebody else is marketing it for some reason. Now, the next thing is I found out that actually it was being marketed by someone else. So I started doing my research, and I discovered who it was that was marketing it and how it all transpired. So I'm going to teach you tonight how that happened, how to avoid it, and how to look for your properties and not have happen to what happened to me, because it could very easily happen to you. So the first thing is that I want to talk about what is the difference between a bird dog and a wholesaler. Now, a lot of people don't like to be called bird dogs. So, but it is a term that is used in the industry. A lot of your seminars and gurus tell you to call yourself wholesalers. So let's look at the two. Because I'll be honest with you, there's no offense to a bird dog. I actually bird dog, even though I'm a wholesaler, but I also do wholesaling. So what is the definition? Well, Webster says, one, a bird dog is one of any various breeds of dogs trained to hunt or retrieve birds. Now, many of you, if you're like me from the South and you do any bird hunting, and I'm not a bird hunter, but I have a lot of friends that do, they always train a Labrador Retriever, one of the best hunting dogs that I know of. And the hunter shoots the bird, hunts it, and the dog goes and retrieves it, or the dog will go through the brush and point to where the bird is so the hunter can shoot the bird. That is what a bird dog is. Another definition is it's an informal person hired to locate special items for people, especially a talent or scout who seeks out promising athletes. Or there's the slang, which I actually found this interesting on Webster Dictionary that it said this. The slang is it's a person who steals another person's date. So I'm not quite sure where that bird dog term came in, but that is what my research did find. Now, I also looked up Investopedia online, and I looked to see what other people were saying were bird dogs. Now, Investopedia is a website that talks about investors, things like that. And it says real estate investing term that refers to someone who spends their time trying to locate properties with substantial investment potential. Usually the intent is to find the properties that are distressed and selling at a discount that can be repaired or remodeled and or sold for a sizable profit, which as a real estate investor, bird dog, that you kind of, the definition is true. The bird dog is the person that goes out, finds the good deals. They're the one that point the wholesalers and other investors in the direction of good properties, and the bird dog makes a commission. Now, let's look at a wholesaler. Wholesaler, according to Webster again, is a merchant or a middleman who sells chiefly to retailers, other merchants, industrials, mainly to resell or a business use. Or it's a person or firm that buys large quantities of goods from various producers and vendors and resells them. Now, when you look at the Investopedia definition, it's the real estate wholesale, similar to flipping, except that the time frame is much shorter. No repairs are made to the home, and that is by the wholesaler. They normally sell them as is before the wholesaler sells it. As a real estate wholesaler contracts with the home seller, markets the home to his potential buyers, then assigns the contract to another buyer. The whole goal of a real estate wholesaler is to sell the home before the contract expires with the original seller and it closes. Now, I've talked about this in many of my webinars and trainings, and almost everybody teaches us assignments. Really, what a wholesaler is someone that does a little bit more work than a bird dog. They're going to go out, and again, I'm giving you my opinion, which I think is pretty close because this is my webinar, and I think I'm pretty smart anyhow. But the wholesaler, their job is to go out. They're going to tie up the property in most cases. They're going to be the one on the contract. The bird dog normally is not on the contract. They're just going to give it over to a wholesaler that will pay them a fee. Now, the wholesaler, they're going to have to come up with a real estate contract, terms, stipulations, all that. Typically, it's anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 days that they have to market it. Now, the goal is that the wholesaler will assign it over to someone else that is ready to buy it for cash. Now, to do that, most wholesalers like bird dogs have to have people on their power team to work with them. And, you know, so let's look at that for a second. Let's look at building an organization. You know, I put together a little chart of typically how a bird dog or a wholesaler works. So a bird dog and a wholesaler, they really build their organization or their business pretty much the same. Each of them are going to look for buyers and they're going to look for sellers. Now, a wholesaler himself or herself will go out and they will talk to sellers. They'll put up bandit signs. They'll send out the letters. They'll do the, we all heard about the yellow Post-its and the yellow bandit signs. You know, I was talking jokingly, a little side note to Rob yesterday. I said, who do you think invented the yellow Post-it note advertisement or the yellow bandit sign, and why did they do it? And Rob says, well, I think it's because they ran out of white at Office Depot, so they bought yellow, and some instructor said, let's do it. And I kind of believe it, because, you know, who knows who started it, but it you know, if you look at both the bird dog and the wholesaler, the same. Their job is to, as the bird dog, is to find other investors or wholesalers to take over their properties, and now and actually market them for them. Now, the next thing is, when you look at your commissions, the bird dog in most cases is only going to make 500 to 1,000 to 2,000 per transaction. That is typical. Now, what determines what a bird dog makes is what the wholesaler is prepared to pay. And it really depends on how much your relationship is with the person, and also, you know, how many deals you're bringing. Now, a wholesaler, they can make $5,000 to $25,000. You know, myself, I look to make anywhere from 5 to 7 per deal. The reason I keep mine a little lower, and I know some investors that say, well, Jim, if I don't make 25,000 per deal, then I'm not going to even, you know, look at it. Well, to me, I'd rather do 10 deals at 5,000 than do one deal at 10. You have to also remember that as a wholesaler, if you remember the definition, your job is to sell your products or goods to someone else for a profit. Now, they also have to make a profit. So if you put too much commissions into the transaction, then what's going to happen is that it'll kill the deal. I've seen that happen time and time again, where, you know, someone will send me a real estate transaction and I'll run the numbers, and the first thing I'm going to do, like most, is I'm going to Google the property. I'm going to do my research, which is something I'm going to teach you tonight. And I can't tell you how many times I've run into where I find the property marketed for less by someone else on the internet. So I will end up calling the bird dog or wholesaler and say, hey, you do realize that this property is being marketed by John Doe on the internet for $5,000, $10,000 less than you're trying to sell it to me for. And almost every time, the answer that I will get is this: well, you know, I have to make money, which is true. You really do. I have no problem with that. The problem I have is that as a new investor, or you're trying to break into the business, if the person you're working with is advertising the same property they gave you at a lower price, what are your chances of success? So you always want to work with that true wholesaler or owner that is an off-market property. So let's look at the virtual customer. Now, the last one I showed you was the bird dog and wholesaler that works, they network. They work with other people face to face. But there's a lot of people out there that are, you know, because of the internet, are working with investors all over Craigslist and other things like that. So let's look at that. The bird dog will still work with their investors or wholesalers, but what happens is, they then in return are going to work like a network marketing group. They're going to work with their customers and their investors, and so on and so on. Now, if you're part of some of these large online groups, Facebook and things like that, This is where that happens. You get one person that advertises, hey, I have properties. The next guy will come in and say, hey, let me have that property. And so they blast it out to the internet, which is, you see here on my screen, I have the internet marketers. I should have added to this presentation one more person, and I've talked about this in some of my prior webinars, is along with the bird dog and the wholesaler, there's also the marketer. Now, the marketer is just like the bird dog, just like the wholesaler, but the difference is all they do is market for a fee. They're going to market. They're not going to show it. They're not going to do anything. Hell, they don't even know the numbers in most cases. They just take what you have and send it out, which is kind of what happened on this property I'm going to show you tonight. So as you can see from my chart here, your property can get, from the start, from the very first person, it can be very diluted by the end. And that's what happens in a lot of cases today, is that one property gets marketed because of the internet on Facebook, Zillow, Craigslist, Backpage, Realtors, everybody else. And what's happening is it's commissioned 15 different times, and the deal becomes so overpriced and so overmarketed that no one ends up buying it. And then no one ever makes money. The key, in my opinion, is to, whether you're a bird dog or a wholesaler or a marketer, is to first find the end user. Find the person that actually owns the property, negotiate a deal, build a buyer's database, if you're going to be a bird dog or a wholesaler, of someone that will take over your property for cash. So look for those cash buyers. Let those investors then, once it's closed, mark it up and sell it retail. If you find those kind of investors, you typically will do much better. Now, how does a bird dog or wholesaler acquire their leads? So before we get into the actual transaction and the marketing, I wanted to touch base on just some of the ways that people are finding properties. First, networking. Your local RIAs, we all know what they are. The Atlanta RIA, the Charleston RIA, all the RIAs that there may be out there. Now, they're good, but a lot of times, you got to be active to make that group good. So if you're part of a RIA, I recommend that you participate, you support your RIA, and they're a great place to get some good information and knowledge and network with seasoned investors in your local community. Real estate clubs, a Chamber of Commerce after hours meetings. You get to meet realtors there. Things like that. Other seminars. I know a lot of you on this call are seminar junkies. I know your names. I don't mean that with offense, but it's true. A lot of people go to seminars to network, and they say they go for education. Sometimes I think they just don't have friends, and I don't mean any disrespect there, because I made a lot of my friends through the seminar business. So maybe I'm one of those same people because I went to them. Another is the internet. A lot of people are using Craigslist, Kijiji, Backpage, Postlets, and the list goes on and on for the internet. I mean, right now, one of the big things is the Facebook groups, the networking groups. Now, the problem I have, and I just want to give you my opinion, and it may make some people upset, but my personal opinion on the Facebook groups, and I have a couple of them myself, is that they're really not that effective. And here's why. Because most of them are, the we buy houses, we sell houses websites and Facebook pages are just full of other people trying to sell. There's no one really buying. Now, see, my philosophy on business is that I'd rather work with buyers than sellers, because I can find something to buy. It's just like Walmart. You look at Walmart, any vendor would love to get into Walmart. What Walmart needs to concentrate on is, how do I get people into my stores? You need to think of the same thing. So if you're surrounding yourself with other people doing the same thing as you, and your business isn't where it needs to be, maybe your internet marketing needs to change to attract people that are actually going to pay you to do business. The bandit signs. The we buy houses called Bubba signs. You know, we all seen them. Now, there's a lot of controversy over bandit signs. If you ask 10 people, 5 are going to say they love them, 5 are going to say they hate them. Me personally, I've never done a bandit sign. I have some friends that do bandit signs, and they work great for them. Now, one of the reasons I personally don't do bandit signs is that, just like many of you in my local community and area here in Atlanta, if I put out bandit signs, I am going to get a fine. And as a matter of fact, they won't have a problem finding me because my phone number will be on that sign, and they'll know just who to call to send the fine to. But if you're in some of the rural areas, some of the areas, bandit signs are effective. But, you know, again, as many of you on the call have learned from me over the years, I like to do what everybody else isn't doing. So if, you know, everybody else is in Atlanta here where I'm at, and I'm sure they may be doing this in your community, they're all putting up the signs on every bill or every telephone pole. We buy houses, we buy junk cars, we buy something. Excuse me. And I think that everybody kind of gets tired of seeing them, so they don't call. I like the personal touch, but I'm old school. So enough on my rant there. Websites. I don't have anything next to it because we don't really need to spend a lot of time on it. We all know what websites are. You know, websites are used for credibility, for marketing, for generating leads. But, you know, you all should have a good website in your marketing. Another way that you acquire leads is other investors and what I call wannabe investors. Now, what I mean by a wannabe investor, that is that person that is thinking about getting into real estate but has a little bit of fear. They want to get their feet a little wet with a seasoned investor before they jump in the pool full board. Now, I love the wannabe investor. One, I love training them because they're just fresh. They're not tainted, and they're, you know, willing to try new things. Now, the wannabe investor normally starts out as the bird dog because they're scared to put their name on a contract. So what is a good source of leads is taking your new investors, your wannabe investors that you meet at the local RIAs, your real estate clubs, other places, and work with them. Train them how to be a good investor, and they will bring you a lot of leads. You know, one of the things that I'm not going to talk about tonight, but I do preach that if you want to be successful, you must do 4 things. And one is you got to learn to listen. 2, you must help other or solve problems. 3, you must help other people. And 4, don't make what you do about the money. Too many investors today are not willing to help the newbie or wannabe investor because they don't see any money in it. I personally like working with that new investor because they'll work harder to bring you deals, and they're hungry to make money. So don't leave out the wannabe investor as someone to network with. Then you have what I call dialing for dollars. Now, on all my webinars, I've talked about this, and driving for dollars we'll talk about in a second. But I recommend each of you on this call, and I recommend this all the time. Some do it, some don't. You don't have to, it's not homework, but I would recommend you do this, is just pick up your local newspaper, Sunday paper, or Craigslist ad, or Kijiji ad, or something like that, and just sit for about 2 hours each weekend or one day a week, whatever time fits for you, and make live phone calls. Now, make those live phone calls of properties that are for sale. And the easiest way of doing that is just say, hello, I seen your ad in the newspaper. Hello, I seen your ad on Craigslist, Kijiji, whatever, about the property for sale. Can you tell me about it? Now, the reason I tell you to do that for the biggest thing is not really to make money or do deals. I know that sounds kind of weird, but the reason I tell people to do that is to practice how to talk to other sellers, other whether it be the FSBO, the investor, the realtor. You'll all overcome your fear by doing that. Now, one of the things that some people teach is driving for dollars. I teach it. It's been taught for years. Now, that is dialing for dollars, one of the things that I like to do the most. I'm old school. When I started, you had to get in your car and knock on doors. You actually had to send postcards. You had to do direct mail. There was no internet. Now, I love doing dialing for dollars. As a matter of fact, if anyone, little plug here, this coming weekend, I will be in Charleston, South Carolina for the speaking with the Charleston RIA and the North American RIA. There is a Keys to Cash Flow training. I will be a guest speaker, trainer, co-speaking with Robert Woodruff of North America RIA, and we'll be doing live dialing for dollars at the training. Like many of you know that have been to my trainings, I love picking up the phone. You bring me leads and do this. Now, you should do that. So a little plug for that. If some of you are in South Carolina and you're on this call, I'm giving away tickets to that for free. So you're more than welcome to come to the event. It will be at the Embassy Suites in Charleston, at the airport, at the convention center. And if you're interested, you can private message me through Facebook, something, and I'll send you a registration link to that. So again, I said I wasn't going to sell. That is a free training, so it's technically not selling. So driving for dollars, let's get back to that. One of the things that I recommend a lot of you to do is, just like dialing for dollars, get in your car and drive looking for that boarded up house. You know, look for the house that's got grass growing up, things like that. Now, I like to do it on Saturdays and Sundays. Now, when I do it, I like to get out of my truck. I drive a truck because I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. That's part of the rule. If you're from Canada, you're driving a car, and it's usually got snow tires on it. But with the driving for dollars, the reason I like to do Saturdays and Sundays is because most of the neighbors are home. Now, what I will do is I will pull up to the driveway of a vacant house, and I will just peep in the windows. Now, I always make sure it's the front windows. Don't go around to the back and all that, because typically you might get shot in some neighborhoods. But I do the front windows because here's what usually happens. People will be watching. They'll be out cutting the grass, things like that, and they're going to see you pull up. They're going to be interested. They're going to be watching you. Now, what I will do, as soon as I see someone out in the neighborhood, I will just drive up or walk up to them and say, hey, I noticed this house seemed empty. I'm an investor. Do you know anything about it? I'd be interested in buying it. Now, one of the things that anybody that does this will tell you is that it's a wealth of information comes from your neighbors. And they'll tell you everything about the house. Now, one of the things I always do when I take my students out for driving for dollars, I just recently did this with Dave Duguay from Canada and Rob from Canada, Rob Provenzano. I will just show them how to stop and just talk to the neighbors and just go, hey, I'm interested in buying in the area. They'll tell you about all the vacant houses. They'll tell you about the sellers, everybody else. That is a great source for leads. Now, I'm going to show you real quickly a short little video, and the volume probably isn't going to work, but it gives you an idea of what driving for dollars kind of is. You know, here you'll see, and again, the volume isn't going to work. This is a video that Rob was doing while we were out doing a mentoring session in Atlanta. But you'll notice how, you know, driving for dollars, you're just going down the street, seeing what the house looks like. You're looking for the boarded up houses, the ones that, you know, look like they're distressed, kind of like this one you see right here. Those are the ones that you want to look for. Now, what you're going to do with those is once you find them, you're going to end up doing the research, which I'm going to show you now. So, you know, let's look at how a deal gets started. So, you know, now that we've kind of gone over a little bit about what is a bird dog and what is a wholesaler and driving for dollars, how do most of your deals get started? Well, normally they get started with a sign like this: we buy houses for cash fast. You know, it's some type of marketing that you have done. But one of the things that I want to bring up, which is what this webinar was about, is how to protect yourself when marketing. Because again, you don't know if the property, a lot of times, if the property that you or some of your fellow marketers are the property marketing is actually the right seller, and are you committing fraud? And this is what's happening across the U.S. and Canada. And I you know, hate to say it, but there are a lot of people that are putting signs in bank-owned properties. They're putting signs in vacant houses that they know no one's been selling or using. And what they'll do is they'll do things like owner will finance, lease option. They will also post the property on Zillow and Postlets, acting like it's really cheap so that they will attract a lot of buyers to the home or to the ad. And then they'll say, hey, the house was sold, but I've got other houses. You know, it's a really way now. The people committing fraud, they actually will go to writing a contract, which is what I'm going to show you tonight. And they will offer owner financing. Hey, if you pay me cash, I'll sign over a quitclaim deed and it's yours. And guys, it's very easy to do. Now, the problem is that most of the time when the deal gets started with the bird dog or wholesale and they're marketing other people, the people they're dealing with trust them. So if you are the very first contact of that deal, you need to do your due diligence to make sure that anybody else that you're dealing with is on the up and up. So let's look at the first step. So when making an offer, make sure that the person you're making the offer to is the real owner. Now, this particular case study that I'm going to show you tonight, I'm going to actually show you the real contracts and things like that. When I first got heard about this deal and seen it on the internet, I was under the impression that, you know, there was a lot more people trying to scam me and others than there was. And really what it turned out to be was one person, the seller, trying to make a few extra bucks, and a newbie bird dog who had sent it to a wholesaler, who the wholesaler thought that the bird dog had done their research, and the wholesaler then marketed it to other wholesalers. There was, by the end of the time that I found out about it, there was 9 people involved in this transaction. And the 9 people, minus the one selling it, were actually good people. You know, at first, of course, many of you know me, I was very upset. I was ready to put someone in jail and sue them and all that. But, you know, after I did my due diligence and research, I discovered that they were very nice people, very just people looking like you, looking to make money, but just didn't know how to do the right amount of research. Now, so the first thing I always do, and I brought up Net or Online, I've taught this many times at a lot of my webinars and trainings, but one of the very first things I do is when I make an offer, and let's say it's accepted, and a lot of times even before I make the offer, one of the first things I do is I want to do a public record search of what the county actually says about the property. Now, you can do this many different ways. I know a lot of you subscribe to websites and all that. We're not here tonight for that. But what I do want to bring up is just a very simple site that I use personally that is a quick resource. It's called Net or Online. Now, this only works in the United States, so for my Canadian investors, this site will not work for you. But if you'll notice where I've circled public records online, if you click on that, it will bring you to a map of the United States. Now, if you notice on the screenshot, you'll see a button that says Property Data Store. Net Online does sell information about properties to people doing research. Now, the way I'm going to show you is the free way. So you can pay or you can get it free. I've been teaching this for years. Net Online finds out, they're probably going to get mad and ask me not to teach it anymore. But the reality is that what they do is they give you links to the actual courthouse. So like I'm in Georgia, so I would click on the state of Georgia. Down at the bottom, and a list of the tax office, the assessors, the deed trust, everything that was for information about that county would come up. Now, another is Zillow. Now, a lot of people don't know this. They've looked at Zillow 100 times, but they don't know that under the home facts, you'll see a little button that says county website. So if you just click on that county website button, it will actually bring you to the county that that property is in any state in the United States. And it will bring you to the website of the county recorder or assessor in most cases. Now that is where you'll start. So if you don't want to if you want to bypass that online, this is another way to do it. So what will you see once you click on that? So if we were to click on that, it would take us to, and we're going to use Fulton County because that is where this property was. And Fulton County is Atlanta, by the way, for anybody that's not from this area. So we have a lot of counties. Fulton County is Atlanta. Now, you'll notice the first thing that comes up is you can search a property by the location address, the owner's name, parcel number, legal information. You can search a map. You can do search sales, as a matter of fact. Now, not all counties do this. Not all counties offer the information, so you have to find out if your county, but most of the major counties do offer this. Now, I actually search by address because most of the time that's all I'm going to have. I don't have the parcel number at this time. I don't have the owner's name. And even if I had the owner's name, I want to check the address to see what is listed for the actual property. So we're going to click on the address. Now what will pop up next? And again, these are screenshots. I've cropped them down just so that you guys could see them larger on the PowerPoint. You could follow along on the internet if you're at home on this, but you would type in where it says street number. You would type in the street number right there. Now the street name. Now that's all I normally do. I don't put where it says street type street, avenue, lane, because the least you put in, the easier it is for them to search. So I type in the address and up comes the property information. Now, this is a screenshot of the property in question that I'm talking about tonight that was hijacked. Now, the bird dog had said that when they pulled up the information, she never did tell me, it was a she, where she got it. She just said, "Hey, I'm so sorry. When I looked up the owner, it showed the other person." Now, when I said to her, I said, "Well, where did you look?" She says, "Well, the internet." Now, I purchased this property, as you will see, and you'll see right up there, owner's name, American Freedom Properties. I actually have whited out some of the legal information. Now, as you will see there, I'm clearly the owner. Now, that's according to what the county says. Now, again, the county doesn't always have updated records. That is a fact. So you got to, play with it around. But if I don't find it here, I'm going to go look at the tax office, and I'm going to find out where the actual taxes are being sent. Now, if you want to even go farther than that, you can actually pay to actually see the transfer and the deed. In many cases, it's online. So when you pull up at the bottom of the the county assessor's information, you will see clearly where American Freedom Properties, and again, this is all live information. So the only thing I've hidden is the actual person that I've sold it to. But you'll see American Freedom Properties, we purchased this in 2004. Now you'll notice a Travis Fitzhugh. And that's the only name that I'm going to divulge because that's the person that actually was trying to sell this house that he did not own. So if you notice here, on 2009, Travis purchased his home for $9,400 from REO Nationwide. Now, what ended up happening was in 2014, if you look at the dates over to the left, you'll notice where you see deed of gift. Now, what that is where Travis, his partner was Kenneth, who was the one selling the whole home. There was liens on the property. Now, we purchased this home for $17,177, but that was an assignment, and I have the quitclaim deed. This was all done with the attorney. She knows this was all done in a few days of each other. But you can clearly see who the owner was of the property. Now, once the offer was made, so let's go back a minute. I just showed you what the bird dog and the wholesaler should have done. Now, what's amazing to me is, like I said, there was 9 people involved in this property. When I say involved, there was 9 different bird dogs and wholesalers that were trying to market this property. Not one of those people bothered to do a research or a quick search, just like I showed you, of who the actual owner was. Amazing to me. It just blows me away. And I asked actually each one of them, you know, why that was. And the first 2, which was the original bird dog that sold it to the wholesaler, said was, well, we looked online and the online said that, you know, somebody else was the owner. The guy was the owner. And I said, you know, where did you go? So I finally talked to the wholesaler, and she said, well, you know, we subscribed to one of those online services that just does it. I said, so you paid for the wrong information? They said, yes. I said, wow, that's amazing to me. When for free, you could have simply went to the county assessor's page and clearly seen that over a year ago, well over a year ago, that person had sold the property. Now, so let's look at what transpired. So the bird dog brought it to a wholesaler. The offer was made. Now the marketing begins. So this is how the deal went bad. The first thing was that the bird dog right here, they sent it out to all their different wholesalers and investors. Those wholesalers sent it out to all their customers and so on and so on. The bird dog also put it out on the internet that they had a property for sale. Now, the funny thing was the bird dog actually didn't have it under contract. The bird dog was just marketing. We sell properties. We have wholesale properties. They went to Facebook. They went to all the places most of you go. They started telling everybody, we have inventory. Everybody got excited. Now, the next thing was that it got marketed. So a wholesaler did end up putting it under contract. Then the wholesaler wholesaled it out to someone else, and it started to be marketed. So as you'll see here, this is the actual ad of the property. Now, you know, again, what I find interesting, this is the actual Zillow ad that I found. This property is for sale cheap. First $15,000 takes the property. The home is an investor special, needs rehab. The home has an ARV of 95,000. Seller is motivated to sell. Called Daryl, and I've actually hid his last name for information. I've hid his phone number. Now, if you notice where I circled it says sold for $25,000 on 2/12/15. All they had to do, or someone had to do, was say to the seller, it says that you sold, that the property was sold in February of 2015. Did you buy it in 2015, or what's the deal there? Because as you clearly see, it was sold for $25,000 just a few months ago. Now, who would sell it for 15? That should have been your red flag. Now, one of the things that you want to be careful of is the red flags. This is something that very few people do. They just go, hey, that's a great deal. It was sold for 25. Must be a motivated seller. Let me hurry up and spend that 15,000. Now, let me show you the ad that I actually put up. So now what happened was they had actually hijacked this property by posting it on Postlets. Now, here's one of the things I'm going to let you know is that many of you don't know this, but you need to do a Zillow account. You can sign up with Zillow account. Once you purchase a property, you need to go into Zillow to your account, and it will say at the top of the Zillow ad, update my estimate. So if you notice under the Zillow estimate, it says update my Zestimate. That's what it says. Now, if no one else has ever claimed that home, you will click on it and you will be the one that claim it. So no one else can market it. Now, if someone else is out there changing it through Postlets or something, it will then be posted the information to Zillow. Then you'll be notified that someone has changed the listing. So it's very important that you do that. Very few people know that. Now, the other thing that very few people know is that Zillow only reports what is being said. So by updating your Zestimate, what a lot of you don't know is that if you can go and put in the correct facts about the house, and it will actually raise the Zestimate value of that property. And that's also a way that people do that, which is probably a whole nother training I should do, and how people create their own Zestimate, which I could show you how to do. If it's something you want to learn, I guess I could teach it if you put into the comments to me on Facebook or message me that you want to learn it. But, you know, you can raise that. So if your Zestimate's low, guys, you can go in and change that and raise it tremendously. Because a lot of people look at Zillow as the God's rule. Now you'll notice I went in and I took the property back over and I put that, hey, anybody trying to sell this property or dealing with it is committing fraud because the property is not for sale. So let's go back to the paper trail. I wanted to show you just how this transpired. Now, again, I took out all the names other than the person that was the old owner trying to sell the house. Now, what you will see, which is amazing, again, you know, I have to say this. Rob Provenzano, who many of you know on this call, is a dear friend of mine, and he also helps me with a lot of marketing. And he does a lot more Facebooking and LinkedIn than all that I do. So when I said I was going to do the webinar, he had actually posted some of this information on the chat rooms and some of the groups about you could actually go to jail for marketing something wrong. And it was amazing to me how many people came back and attacked him saying, oh, Rob, you're wrong. You can't go to jail. You can't get fined. You can't get in trouble. But guys, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you sign a purchase and sales agreement that is false and you are trying to do a transaction that is fraud, last time I checked, you could possibly go to jail for that or be fined or sued or so on and so on. And if anything, lose your reputation. So for all of those that argued with you, Rob, buddy, I just showed them how they can get in trouble. Now you'll notice here, this is an actual copy of the purchase agreement. What the seller did, or the one wholesaler did for me, was send me the documentation for my attorney to review. And you'll notice where the sales price was actually $10,000. So the reason that the Zillow ad said 15 is because the bird dog was trying to mark it up. So if you'll notice, it says, you know, and what amazes me even more is that the person, Mr. Travis here, he knew he sold this home, but he clearly signed a contract saying that the title would be looked at and there would be a warranty deed on it. So I'm not quite sure what he was thinking. Now here's actually the signatures. As you will see, the date of the signature was 3/19 and he signed it on the 27th of March. So I want you to watch that, because here's what then ended up happening was that the property was immediately assigned, just like a wholesaler bird dog does. So on the 21st, a little bit later, the property was assigned to another wholesaler. That was the Daryl person that was marketing it. Now, I've hidden out his last name. Met him. Seems like a nice guy. Again, he just didn't know that the wrong people were selling the property. And, you know, we've worked that out. But you'll notice here, on the assignment contract, and it was signed by both parties. So imagine this. Imagine that, you know, so let's just say for hypothetical reasons that, you know, the people that attacked Rob and said you can't get fined and all that was true. Here's the other thing that you want to really pay attention to. What if, don't most assignments and purchase agreements come with a down payment? Don't they come with some type of deposit? So let's say you put up 500,000, couple thousand, who knows? what are the chances are you will get that back once someone finds out this deal is fraud? You're the least you're out a couple $1,000s. Now let's continue. As you see this, I'm not don't have time tonight. We're almost at an hour, but one of the things that I always teach is what I call the 10 steps of a deal. I'm actually creating a program on that right now. Over the years, everybody's told me I need to do that, so I'm going to record this. But of course, you do your research, your marketing, you make contact with the potential buyer or seller. You do your preliminary information. Now, again, this is the part before we make our offer. We do some preliminary information. I recommend all of you, part of your preliminary information, if John Doe says he's the seller of the property, before you make your offer, you just do a quick county search and say, is John Doe listed as the seller? Or here's what you simply do. Mr. John Doe, are you the seller or representing the seller? Do you have an interest in this property? Then once the offer's made, we go to contract, which you've seen. Now, if you're the one that is buying the assignment, if you're the one that's on the assignment contract, you should do your own due diligence, guys. Now, due diligence, a lot of you think is just, well, I need to do the inspection. I need to do those kind of things. The first due diligence I do is the property owned by the person I am dealing with. It's the very first thing I do before I worry about the roof leaking. That is all of yours job. So I wanted to show tonight just how, by doing lack of due diligence, you can lose money, possibly be fined, possibly worse, go to jail. I mean, even if you're unknown that the fraud was committed, imagine if you had gave the person money and thought you owned it, and you start rehabbing the house. And then all of a sudden I show up and go, hey, what happened? What are you doing? I'm rehabbing your house. I'm rehabbing my house. No, I own it. And then you just found out you did all that work for nothing. So how did the story end? I know before we get to questions, one of the things everybody asks us, so how did it end? Well, it ended like this. I ended up, it took me literally only about one day to track down all the people involved. And like I said, I want to be clear that the bird dog and the wholesaler and Daryl and the other people that were involved in marketing it were actually good people on the up and up. They weren't trying to commit fraud. I want to be real clear about that. The mistake they made was that they didn't do their due diligence. They trusted someone else, that their word, that the seller, and it started with the bird dog. And a few of the people involved were actually seasoned investors that have been doing this for years. Now, the first wholesaler that did it was fairly new. She has a job, great person. I met her. We've stayed in contact, but she just didn't know what she didn't know. That's all she was guilty of. Now, the Travis person that had sold it, his excuse was that he didn't know that the sale went through. That was the interesting part. He had said, well, I thought I signed some paperwork, but I never got anything back from the attorney. And when the bird dog called me and said I was the owner, because that's actually how it started. The bird dog was doing their driving for dollars and seen the vacant house, boarded up, secured. So they did the research that they paid some online service to. And that service said that a Ken Fitzhugh was the actual owner. So they looked up the phone number. They contacted him. He actually told me, he said, I told him I didn't own it. And she goes, well, the county courthouse says you do, according to them. And what ended up happening is he thought he could get an extra $5,000, because what ended up happening was he lowered the $10,000 to $5,000. Said, here, just give me $5,000 and I'll walk away, which should have gave somebody a red flag. But long story short, he apologized. No one got, I never, followed up with the attorney, which I had already called actually the authorities. I'd called the police. I'd called the my attorney, who is a judge. And after looking at everything, I decided it was just easier to let it go and post online that it wasn't for sale, because as we all know, attorneys are not cheap. And it just wasn't worth it to me. But it was a great learning experience, and for a lot of you, and I've been through this before. I've had properties recently, the one that I purchased one time, that the seller had a partner and they didn't know the partner had sold it. This happens all the time, guys. So again, I wanted to share that story and the webinar with you. And before I take any questions, as I told you, there's no real selling on this, our webinars. I love doing these for free. It's my way of giving back. I hope all of you appreciate it. One of the things that I do ask, though, is that to help us out and pay us back is to remember to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube, and like us on our Facebook channels. And also, we put on YouTube extra trainings for those who subscribe. We have private videos that once you subscribe, you can get, of other backed up webinars, things like this, other trainings. We're continuing to do more. And that's, the way you can help American Investor Association and Canadian Investor Association grow. We're a member-based organization, and it's one of the ways that we can share and give back. So like us on social media. We would greatly appreciate it. And now I will answer a couple questions that have come through, and I've only gotten 3. So if you, at this time, if you're still on the call, I see we still have a good number on the call. So I hope everybody has enjoyed the webinar. And again, if you really did enjoy it, go back on to our Facebook channels and write a little post that, hey, you loved the training, it was worth it, and that's how we grow. But the first question is from Raphael. When do you do business with a wholesaler? Is it okay to ask the person to show you their contract so you know the terms they have with the seller? Can you demand to see the contract they have with the seller? Now, if you are buying a property, that's a good question. And the answer is yes and yes. So if you're working with a wholesaler and you're going to take over the assignment, they must show you the contract they have with the seller. Because remember, as the assignment contract with the wholesaler, you are taking on, you basically are saying that I'm taking on the responsibility of everything that contract says. So part of your assignment contract will say that, and they will submit it. Now, the other thing is, if you're working with a wholesaler that is the actual owner, because a lot of wholesalers actually take title to the property. I do that, because a lot of the properties that you get under for your portfolio, you may you may not sell it before the contract expires, so you end up buying it. So in that case, Raphael, there would be no other contract for them to show you with the seller. The only contract that you would see at that point is between you and the wholesaler on the purchase of the property. But again, if you are assigning they're assigning the contract over to you, simply, just like I taught tonight, review it. Find out that the seller in the contract with them has given the right to assign the contract. That is important. And that the person on the contract is the actual owner of the property. And lastly, protect yourself by using an attorney. That's what I do. That way, and get a warranty deed. That way, you know that you'll get a good title. Next, Stephen asks, what happens if you don't see the address on the property? Now, I'm going to assume that question came during the Zillow part. So if you type into Google or Zillow, or actually I think it came up when I was talking about the county research, if you don't see the property address, that can happen. It typically means that you've typed in the street wrong, or they have listed it different. Give an example, McDaniel Street in Atlanta. Most people spell it MCD, so with it all one word, but the city of Atlanta has listed as MC dash and then the word Daniel. So that can happen. And if you shorten it up, you do those researches, then you want to ask yourself, is the property real? Another question is there a proper way to market a lead instead of an actual market to a lead instead of an actual property, such as a friend who has a wholesale I'm not sure the question. I have a friend who a wholesale property. I'm going to assume your question, Peggy, is you have a friend who is a wholesaler or has wholesale properties. Yeah, you can market for leads for buyers and sellers. I'm starting to do more Facebook marketing, YouTube marketing myself. I do Craigslist. Now, one of the ways I like to market for leads is eBay. I put what I call my throwaway houses I get really cheap. If I buy a bulk or I have a wholesaler that wants to just give one away, I'll put it on Facebook or eBay just to get the leads, but I'll put my website and things like that out there and put it out there for people to see and generate leads. Or just, the I buy houses, things like that. Another great source of generating and marketing for a lead is putting your website or things like that together and putting the, sign up for my free report, my free news report, things like that. They're called squeeze pages. A lot of people do those. I don't do a lot of Facebook marketing. I try and generate leads through there, but not through the paid ads. I'm starting to test out the YouTube, finding there's a lot of work to that. But, that is one way. But, the best way I find of marketing is just word of mouth. And Craigslist. Rob, I know, does LinkedIn a lot. I don't have time for LinkedIn, but some people do that. Just getting the word out. Next is question. How do you approach properties that are with a realtor company? That's a good question. Me personally, I treat it just as if it was a wholesaler investor. One of the next webinars we're going to be doing is how investors and realtors can work together to profit. Now, you got to think about it. The realtor is there to make money just like a bird dog or a wholesaler. They're just marketing the property, and the seller has chosen to go the realtor way. Now, as many of you know that have been with me before, I work with realtors on almost all my transactions. I love my realtors I work with. They do a great job for me. I let them present the offers, especially if I'm working with the bank. They make the commissions. I love paying commissions to people. I look at it this way, that if I'm paying the commission, I'm making money. If I'm not paying commissions, then I'm not. But realtors have a great resource available to them. The MLS and other things, they're great at marketing. They also have some pocket deals. But I would approach a realtor or realtor company the same way I would a bird dog or anyone else. So Stephen came back and asked me about the property address. I was referring to the properties that don't have a mailbox. Now that's a good question. Now, Stephen, what I do, and this goes back to driving for dollars and using NetR Online. If you go to the NetR Online or the county records, just like I showed you, if you go back and where you notice where we were at the county courthouse part, it had a little button that said map. Now, what that does is bring up the map of the area. So what I will do is, as I'm driving down the street, I will see a house that has no number on it, no mailbox, nothing. And I will look to see if the house next door has a number. So it might be Maple Street. And the house next door is 1285 Maple Street. I'll make myself a little note that says property next door to 123 whatever Maple Street, blue house, is vacant. So then I'll go back to the NetR Online or the county courthouse, I'll go up to the map and I will see the plat map and see where that property is, because it's all listed online. And I will pull up the record. I'll hit the actual parcel number, and boom, the address will come up, the owner will come up, all the information will come up on it. That is the easiest way. You could also do, I guess, the Google Street Views, but not all properties are on that. And two, it doesn't always show the address. So I go to the parcel map at the county is the easiest way that I find to do it. Okay, guys, I don't see any other questions. So I'm assuming that no one else has any, but if you do and you get those in the next 2 seconds, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Other than that, I hope everybody has enjoyed the presentation tonight of the webinar, and I hope this helps you avoid some potential problems in the future with your own properties. And, you know, as always, as I mentioned a minute ago, we ask that you go to our Facebook and our YouTube channels and participate. And if you have any comments or you want to start a discussion, you can also, we have a real estate group, if you look up on Facebook, called Real Deals. And Rob Provenzano started that, and there's no property sales or marketing. It is strictly for education. It's Real Deals Done Right is, the actual one. You can either post Rob or myself, and we can get that to you. And also, again, for those of you that may be in the South Carolina area, I will be in South Carolina doing a 2-day training this weekend at the Embassy Suites in Airport Convention Center for the North American RIA and Charleston RIA, that group right there. It's called Keys to Cash Flow. Be a 2-day training. We'll have properties, live deals, and a lot of great education. So if you're interested in that, you can private message me, and I'll be more than happy to get you tickets. Other than that, guys, I'd like to thank everybody for being on the call or the webinar. Good night. God bless, and I'll see you on the next webinar.